All right, Andy, this past Friday night was the final SmackDown on Fox. We are moving to USA coming up this Friday, and it's going to be a 3-hour show. Now, before we get to what that means and what's going to be contained in that show, let's take a look back down memory lane, shall we, at the Fox era of Friday Night SmackDown. As you look back on it, man, for me, it's hard to look back on it as a whole because of the Thunderdome era and the pandemic just as a year and a half of this, it just really weighed it down. There was obviously some good things in there, but when you look back on this era, what stands out?
Man, the first episode I remember a lot for good reasons and for horrible reasons at the same time. Obviously, the show kicked off with Becky and Rock in the ring and running down Baron Corbin and everything else. That was a fun moment. And then you had the whole Kofi Kingston versus Brock Lesnar debacle, which I still think is probably one of the worst, if not the worst, booking decision in WWE history. I think Sam Roberts brought it up on his podcast. At least you could have had a competitive match between them because we saw what Brock did with AJ and with Balor and with Bryan. You could do that with Kofi. Exactly. And, the way that Kofi's title reign came to an end was just so bad. It was so sour. And so it was straight up Vince McMahon. And especially for what we got as the reason why, because of Cain Velasquez, who was not even in here for a cup of coffee and was put on like one of the worst matches I've seen all since like in the SmackDown run on Fox. He was like probably the worst wrestler that came through that company because it was rough. Like you said, the pandemic era, I don't remember a lot from week to week. The things I do remember, obviously in the beginning, Triple H being on commentary was amazing.
And then grabbing a microphone a camera.
Yeah. He was perfect on that. Yeah. Some of the stuff that they were able to do with The Fiend and John Cena going into WrestleMania 36 was really cool off of TV.
Yep.
And so I remember that a lot. And then obviously like everything that has happened with Roman Reigns and the Bloodline on SmackDown has just been week to week was always great. Some of the most fond memories I have of the OG Bloodline storyline they were telling happened on SmackDown with Sammy and with Roman and with the Usos. All of it was great. So that's probably what I'm going to remember the most is the Bloodline and the rise of LA Knight. I think is something that needs to be talked about too.
Yeah, I agree. LA Knight for sure. His popularity went through the roof. But man, like when we look back on the SmackDown on Fox era, you can't look at it without saying this is where the Bloodline reigned. Like from 2020 in the middle of the pandemic to the end, the Bloodline was must-see television. It really... Again, we say this all the time, but Roman Reigns was the star. I mean, yes, Sami Zayn had a lot to do with it, and the Usos had a lot to do with it. Paul Heyman, of course. But Roman Reigns being the centerpiece of the Bloodline and being the Universal Champion for 1,316 days, that guy made the SmackDown on Fox era. That guy made the whole era. Now, sure, viewership was good. Fox lost a lot of money. We know that. But for this to be on cable television, this storyline with the Bloodline and this presentation by Fox, it made SmackDown must watch every single week. And it overtook Raw by a long shot for the top show in WWE every single week. Thanks to Roman Reigns and this story and this presentation.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think, when you think about this era, you're going to think about the Bloodline, you're going to think about Roman. Obviously, you're going to think about the transition of power in WWE too. Like that happened. That happened during this time. Was it SmackDown or was it Raw when Stephanie came out to try to get everybody to chant "Thank you, Vince"? Do you remember that?
I think that one was Raw because I think
He addressed everybody on SmackDown, though.
He did. Yes, he did.
Okay.
And
I knew something happened.
Yes, he addressed everybody on SmackDown. Then I think her appearance was on Raw. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, but like just some crazy things happened throughout this entire run.
Do you remember the SmackDown in the pandemic era when they were honoring Triple H and Shawn Michaels came out and Vince basically cut him off? And like that segment was only like 5 minutes or whatever because Vince cut him off. Oh my gosh.
I do remember that. Yeah.
Let me tell you what the biggest thing that bugged me the most about the SmackDown on Fox era. The transition to the pandemic happened and we lost the stage and the setup from the initial run on Fox. That was such a cool stage. We'd never seen anything like that before and we lost it, never to be seen again.
We also, for a long time, and I don't think this was Fox. I think this was Kevin Dunn because, he's an idiot. But we also lost the 4K camera for a while. Remember SmackDown?
Oh, that's
Fox
right.
had the 4K camera for a while on the weekly show.
Yep.
And Roman's entrance every week on that 4K camera was beautiful.
Yep.
And then it went away.
Yep.
And then it started to come back. They normally use it for pay-per-views and stuff, but
yep.
Man, that 4K camera is gorgeous.